What's up, everyone? Welcome to the January 31st edition of FanDuel Tournament Plays presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can find me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. Today, we're going to take a look at 5 of the top tournament options on tonight's 8-game slate. As always, we are waiting on some injury news. Be sure to tune in to the deeper dive and live before lock leading up until tip. But for now, taking an early look at 5 of the top tournament options on FanDuel as things currently stand. Coming in at number 5, Kemba Walker, currently projected for 3% ownership with a 4% chance of being in the optimal lineup. The Knicks rotation has been all over the place recently, and that is true for Kemba as well. You've had a couple of games recently where, for one reason or another, he plays 18 or 19 minutes. But in his most recent game, he approached 30 minutes, and he's only $4,500 tonight. So there is some upside at this price. It's also a very favorable matchup against the Sacramento Kings. We know that Kemba's production has been all over the place this season. He had one stretch where he played really well, but prior to that, he had been completely removed from the rotation. So you can't really feel too confident in what you're getting. But as long as the ownership is low at a very inexpensive $4,500 price tag, there's a lot of upside to be had. And I think we should be embracing the volatility here. Number 4, Clint Capella, projected for about 1% ownership with a 5% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Somewhat similar to Walker, we can't really rely on Capella to play big minutes at this point. We've just seen, even in games where he does get what appears to be full run, he's only getting around 26 minutes. So it's not ideal, but he does average around 1.15 fantasy points per minute, and he's getting virtually no ownership here. There's always a greater than 0% chance that he just plays more minutes than we're expecting. So that would be one way that you get a favorable outcome, most likely from Capella. But even in 26 minutes, this is someone that has plenty of block upside and can certainly put together a pretty sizable double-double in that amount of time if he's playing well. So at very little ownership at a $7,200 price tag, there is tournament winning upside here. Number 3, Jaren Jackson Jr., projected for 7% ownership, 13% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He has power forward and center eligibility on FanDuel. He's $7,500, and Jackson's likely to give you around 30 minutes tonight against Philadelphia as long as he's able to avoid foul trouble. We know that that's a big if, but the ceiling is there, and the salary reflects the fact that he does occasionally get into foul trouble. So taking on Jackson, Dylan Brooks still out, so there is some additional usage there as well. Looks like a pretty high upside option to get to at relatively low ownership. Number 2, Robert Williams, 8% projected ownership, 13% chance of being in the optimal lineup. On FanDuel, Williams has power forward and center eligibility, so he's a little bit easier to get to than he is on sites where he's only a center, and he offers a very high ceiling. He's been playing more minutes recently. You can expect him to play 32 to 34 minutes against Miami tonight, assuming that the game is competitive, and he offers plenty of defensive stat upside, which we know is really valuable on FanDuel with their scoring system. So you're not talking about a high usage player, but he doesn't need to be because he averages over a fantasy point per minute, and he's likely to give you 32 to 34 minutes. If you can run good in blocks, or if he gets more offensive rebounds than usual and gets some extra putbacks, it's not going to take a lot for Williams to put up a very good score at this price and at power forward. And number 1, sticking with the Boston Celtics, despite a pretty unappealing matchup against the Miami Heat, Jaylen Brown is projected for 13% ownership with an 18% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He has small forward and shooting guard eligibility, and he's really inexpensive on FanDuel at only $8,400. Brown's value always takes a bit of a hit when Jason Tatum is active, but if that's going to be reflected in his salary, then it's not as big of a deal. Brown is certainly capable of putting together a massive game. He's certainly talented enough. He has, on average, Tatum, among others, cutting into his production. But at this price tag, it's a spot that offers a very high ceiling. So to recap, the top 5 tournament options on FanDuel as things stand right now: number 5, Kemba Walker; number 4, Clint Capella; number 3, Jaren Jackson Jr.; number 2, Robert Williams; and number 1, Jaylen Brown.